Well, hey, good morning and welcome to church, everyone. Welcome to those who are joining us online. A special welcome to all of our guests. Come on, church, let's welcome everyone this morning. As you came in this morning, you probably received an index card, and I know some of y'all are like, what is that about, and why is it pink or whatever? I am starting a new series next week, and I need you to help me preach it, and it's called You Asked For It. And so what I want you to do is I want you to write down 1 or 5 or 12 or 100, whatever questions you have about the Bible that you want me to answer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all those together. I already know what I'm going to talk about next week, but I'm going to put all those together, and the top 1 questions I'm going to answer from the Bible. Listen, no matter how hard they are, God has an answer, and it's in His Word, and we're going to look at it, and we're going to find out. So if you have a question about the Bible, about God, about marriage, about parenting, about money, about whatever, then I want you to write it down and leave it in your chair, and we'll pick it up after service. You don't have to put your name or nothing. It can be anonymous. Don't ask me why I preach long, because you won't get a good answer for that. So don't ask that. I don't have a Bible answer for that. I mean, so anyway, do me a favor though, and just write that question down, leave it in the chair. And a couple of them already came in, but I need some more. And I love these types of things because I want to know what you're thinking about. Because here's the deal. A lot of us are thinking about different things, and sometimes I don't hit on what you're wanting to know or talk about. If you want to know when Jesus is going to come, I don't know, but we can talk about it. You can write it down, and we'll talk about it. But I'll tell you right now, I don't know. So, but stuff like that, just ask those kind of questions and write them down. Go ahead and grab those message notes out that you received as you came in, and we're going to jump into God's Word. So we have been in a series the last several weeks called Journey to Freedom. Journey to Freedom. And what we've done is we have gone through the book of Exodus. We've been following along with Moses as he leads the Israelites out of Egypt. They were in slavery for over 400 years, and he was the man for the job. And so God called him to take them out. And so we've been on this journey with Moses of leading them out of Egypt. But how many of you know that he led them out of Egypt so they weren't slaves anymore physically, but they were slaves mentally. They were slaves spiritually. And here's what I know about salvation. Just because you get saved doesn't mean that God delivers you at that moment from everything. Right? And so there are some things that we have to learn in the journey to freedom. I've been saved now for over 20-something years. I don't do the things that I did in year 1. But there are still some things that I deal now that God's got to still deliver me from even today. And so that's what we've just been doing. So we've been looking at what are the things that God had to deliver them from. If you missed any of these, they're on our YouTube channel. You can go back and watch them. If you can't sleep one night, turn it on. I will put you to sleep. I guarantee it. Anyway, that was more funnier than you gave me credit for. Go! All right. Today, though, will be the final message in this series. And here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about idolatry. We're going to talk about idolatry. And I already know some of y'all are like, well, I don't need to hear this because I don't worship an animal. Well, you'll be surprised at what you do worship here in a minute as we get into it. Go. Exodus 23-4 says, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on earth beneath or in the waters below. So why would God make this command? So while Moses was up on the mountain with God, God was giving him some rules, he was giving him some regulations, and he was giving him what we call the 10 Commandments today. So why would God go, hey, the first 2 commandments have to do with worshiping me and not worshiping other things? Why? Because God put it in each and every one of us to be worshipers. We all worship. I know some of y'all be like, no, I don't. Look, if you're a football fan, if you're a car enthusiast, if you're whatever, you worship something. Like what you give your time and talent and energy to could be the very thing that you worship. And so God put it in all of us to be worshipers. So everybody in this room and online, we are all worship. The problem comes in when we start worshiping the wrong thing. Or we worship the wrong person. We worship the wrong, we put our worship into the wrong thing or person. So we're going to look in the book of, we're going to look at Exodus 32. If you have your Bible, you can open up to that. If not, it'll be on the screen behind me. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the story of Exodus 32 where they worshiped a golden calf. They worship a golden calf. And so here we go. In Exodus 32, 1 through 8, it says this: when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." Remember, Aaron was the spokesperson for Moses. He was Moses' brother. He took what they had and handed him and made it into an idol, cast it into the shape of a calf. Now, let me just say this. This was not a cow. This was what they believed was a bull, okay? So it wasn't a moo of a moo idol, okay? So fasten it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early, sacrificed burnt offerings, and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt.'" So what I want to do is I want to point out two things that worship in a false idol does and how we can get rid of it. So if you're taking notes, jot this first one down. Idolatry causes us to replace God. Idolatry causes us to replace God. Again, Exodus 32, 1, it says, "When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, 'Come and make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him.'" So Moses is having this meeting with God. He's on this mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and God's just revealing all these things to him. He's giving him the Ten Commandments and other laws and regulations, but he's been gone for 40 days, and he is the leader of these people, and he's gone, and they don't know what happened to him. For all they know, he died on the mountain. Like, they have no idea where he's at. And so they went up to Aaron and said, "Aaron, we don't know what happened to this man, but we know this: something inside of us needs a God to lead us, and we're messing out, and we feel empty, and so we want you to create a God for us." And you might look at that and go, "Man, I don't know about the whole creating a false God or creating an idol like that out of a calf." But here's what we know: we all create idols in our lives. And that idol is to replace God. That idol is to replace God. How many of you have ever got tired of waiting on God and you decided to do something on your own? You get tired of waiting on God. God's like the slowest, most on-time person you'll ever meet. Like, the dude is slow, but he's always on time. Right? Isn't that funny how that works? Like, I'm slow and never on time, so because I'm married to my wife. But anyway, that's a whole different story. That couch is going to be good, ain't it? So, notice that they said, I want you to notice some things in this wording. They said, "Make us gods," plural. Notice they didn't say, "Make us a God." They said, "Make us gods." You know why? Because they know within their heart, and they came from a culture that there were many gods. So one time I was working out when I lived in Kansas, and I met this guy who was from India, and so, of course, in India, they worship many different gods. And we were talking, and I might have the number wrong, but it's pretty close. I asked him, I said, "How many gods do y'all have?" And he said, 500. I'm like, "Dear Lord, I can barely please mine. One. Like, how do you please 500? And he told me all these different things that they have to do and da-da-da-da. And I just, because sometimes I'm sarcastic at the wrong time. And I said, how do you remember what to do? Like, I would be lost and probably offer the wrong sacrifice to the wrong God, and I would be in hell, and that would be it. Like, he didn't think it was very funny when I said that. But that's why they wanted many gods. You know why? Because they wanted to make sure they had it all covered. If you read in the book of Acts, there's a place called Athens that Paul went to, and there were many gods, and there was even one god that was ascribed to nobody. It was an unknown god because they didn't want to mess up. And so you have these Israelites going, hey, we came from a culture, we came from Egypt that had a lot of gods, so we want you to make us gods, not God. And if you look around America, we have a lot of gods. We have a lot of gods in America. And so we don't just have one God either, but we create many gods in our lives. We might look at the story and say, that's stupid. Why would you try to replace God with a statue or a calf that doesn't talk or hear or move? And my question to us today, this morning, is why do we do the same thing? We do the same thing. You know what we turn to? Money. Yeah, have you ever noticed that money says in God we trust, but we trust more money than God? Who that'll preach? I'll talk about that when I start talking about money later. Not today, so y'all can get comfortable. But we look at money and it says in God we trust, but how many of us actually trust in money? How many of us actually trust in money? And so money becomes a god to us. Well, if I had that, it would make me happy. If I could buy that, it could make me happy. If I made that, if I had that in the bank, if I had that in retirement, if I had that in stocks, I would be happy. Can I tell you something? There is a very rich person in my family who is the most miserable person in my family. He has it all, but yet he doesn't have Jesus, so he has nothing. He's miserable. And so we look at money to be our God. We look to relationships, man. Listen, I remember those days thinking, man, if I can just date her, my life will be great and perfect. And I married her, and my life is great. See how I won't be sleeping on the couch now. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm kidding. Man, y'all got to laugh with me. Come on. She just wrote down brownie point. That's what she did. She just wrote it down, brownie point. Anyway, seriously, we look to relationships. If I was married to them, if I was married to them, if I dated them, and we think that person's going to make us happy. If you've been married for a long time, or maybe just a day, you know that people don't make you happy. People are messy, and they're frustrating, and his problems become your problems, and her problems become your problems, and it just becomes a mess. So you can't marry the right person. Listen, teenagers, if you're not married yet, if you're not married in this room, you don't marry the right person, you become the right person. When you become the right person, then you'll find the right person because you know who you're looking for. Man, that's a great sermon one day. I'm going to preach that. So we look to accomplishments. We look to trophies and medals and awards and all these different things. We look at so many different things. We look to food. Look at this is always a touchy one when I talk about food and stuff because I'm always preaching to myself. Like, how many times do I turn to a tub of ice cream when I'm feeling down? A lot. How many times do I go to a drive-in restaurant because I'm feeling down? How many times do we turn to food because we feel down? You know why it's called comfort food, right? Because it comforts you in the moment. Like, I feel so much better. Did you know, though, that we could turn food into a god? Because we look to food to satisfy the emptiness on the inside. And we're trying to turn that food into... We turn to alcohol, we turn to drugs. Here's what I'm going to say this. We could turn anything into God. Anything. Anything at all. You can turn your animal into a god. Listen, I love my dog. I do. But I ain't worshiping my dog. Sometimes, never mind, I'm not going to say it because I'll offend some people. Sometimes I like to open the back door and say, Go away, go away, and never come back. Cuba, come back. Go. Here's what I know. In the end, nothing will satisfy like God. And we know that. But yet we still continue to run to the false idols and gods that we make. If you take it down, jot the second one down. Idolatry will always cost us something. Now, I've read this story multiple times and never really grasped this until I feel like God just put it in my heart. I want you to hear this, okay? It says in Exodus 32, 2 through 6, it says, Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing. Now, stop. If you remember from a couple weeks ago, where did they get all their jewelry from? They got it from the Egyptians as they were leaving Egypt. Listen, they took the, oh man, this is going to be good. They took the blessing of God and they turned it into God. You get that? Like the jewelry and all of that was a blessing from God. When they were leaving, they're like, hey, I'm going to bless you. So take the jewelry, take the clothes, take the food, or take everything from the Egyptians because I'm going to bless you. But now they took the blessing of God and they turned it into a God. We are blessed in America. I don't care if you don't have $1 to your name. You're more blessed living in America than you are the rest of the world. You have clean water. That right there makes you blessed. Can I just say something, though? We are so blessed that we worship the blessing instead of the blesser. We worship our boats. We worship our cars. We worship our houses. We worship our clothes. We worship bodies, we worship people, we worship all of these different things. And listen, all those things are good. If you have a nice, beautiful home, enjoy it. If you have a boat, invite me. If you have, I'm just saying. Don't worship it. Don't take the blessings of God and turn them into worship. And that's what Aaron just did. So anyway, he took them, what they handed him, and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival. Anyway, we're going to party. We're going to party to the Lord. So the next day, the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Now, I want you to notice something, okay? I'm going to go through these really quickly, and they're not in your notes, but I'm going to go through them really quickly. There are 3 things that happen when we worship false idols. Number 1, it cost them personally. Now, again, remember, they took off what they had to give to make a fake false god. It cost them personally. Notice that they took off. They had to sacrifice their belongings for it. Listen to me. Having an idol always costs you in the end. Having an idol always costs you in the end. It cost them spiritually. They partied and chased after false god, indulging in revelry, which is this, okay? The word revelry is only used one other time in the Old Testament, and it's used for Isaac caressing his wife. Now, because there are kids in the room, I'm not going to tell you what that is. Just use your imagination. And if you don't know, ask your mom when you get home. They were partying, all right. And so they took what God gave them as a gift for each other, and they used it to party and worship each other. And so they were worshiping, and it cost them spiritually. Because listen, when you walk outside the lines of God, you will always cause a division between you and God. Always. There is a holiness with God that we have to walk in. So it cost them spiritually. They were compromised. They compromised what they knew was wrong in order to satisfy their idol. Can I tell you something real quick? If you don't get anything, hear this. If your idol causes you to step outside the will of God, it is an idol from hell, and there's a demon. God would never ask you to disobey him. God would never ask you to do anything outside of his word. Ever. If your idol causing you to sin, you have a false idol. Now, that could look like a lot of things. That could look like a lot of things. Galatians 5:16-17 says this. So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. Listen. Whatever idol we have in our life, if it's causing us to walk away from God, that's what it is, an idol. It's an idol. And if we're all honest, I think we can look at some things that kind of top God in our life. I can. I mean, of course, when I'm studying, man, I'm asking God, okay, God, reveal to me. And I'm going to tell you my idol here toward the end. I'll tell you the idol I have in my life. But here's what I know. Idolatry costs us. It costs them spiritually, and it costs us spiritually too. The third one, idolatry costs them relationally. Exodus 32:7-10 says this. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down because your people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. I have seen these people, the Lord said to Moses, and they are stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. First of all, I think it's funny that God said, hey, your people are acting fools down there. Whenever my kids do something stupid, I look at Sherry and say, that is your kid. Those are your kids. Like, get them under control. I just think it's funny that God said, your people. Those are your people. They're not mine. They're yours. But here's the deal. God can't just wink at our sin. He has to deal with it. He doesn't just turn his head away from our sin as if it didn't happen. He has to deal with it. This goes on to say Moses was angry and threw down the tablets that had the Ten Commandments on it, and they broke. Now you have God mad at you and Moses mad at you. Idolatry cost them relationally. Now, we're going to get real right now. How many families have been destroyed because of an idol? How many families have been destroyed because the person, the husband or the wife are workaholics, and they're always at work, and they're always at work, and they're always at work, and they're always at work. And they're not at work because they need to be, they're at work because they're workaholics. I am a workaholic, and I got to have boundaries in my life. I have to. If not, man, work becomes my God. That wasn't the God I was going to talk about. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But work, I remember one time when I first went to ministry, and I was in Plymouth, I was youth pastor there, and it was like 5:30, and our office hours were 8 to 4:30, and it was 5:30, and I was still working away, and Sherry called me, and my kids were young at that time. She called me, she said, you coming home today? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. I got to do this. And that was my response every day. I just got to do one more thing. Well, luckily, praise God, my family wasn't destroyed because I had to do one more thing. But how many of your families have been destroyed because you have to do one more thing? How many families are destroyed because we worship the God of money or success or career because we want the bigger house, we want that bigger boat, we want that bigger that, we want that bigger that, but our families are falling apart, our marriages are falling apart, our kids hate us, nobody wants to be around us, we're grumpy, we're grouchy, and we think we're doing great, but we're looking back and there's destruction behind us. Is that too real? Because that's where we live. There are a lot of families that have been destroyed because people are workaholics. They're workaholics. And so how many families have been destroyed because of that? How many families have been destroyed because we worship the God of sports? Listen, I always had a fast rule in my family that if a baseball, football, cheer, anything happened on a Sunday, we didn't go. Because God was number one. I'm not telling you how to live. I'm just telling you what I did. Church was never, listen to me, church was never an option for my family. And it's not because I grew up in church. I did not grow up in church. I didn't get saved until I was almost 19 years old. But it changed my life in such a way that I saw the way my family lived and I wanted to live differently. And if skipping church on Sunday was going to end up looking like them, I didn't want nothing to do with that. And so there was never an option. Listen to me, no matter how late I was out on a Saturday night, I was still in church on a Sunday morning. Even 3 weeks ago, me and a couple other people went to a concert in Indianapolis, didn't get home until 1:30. I was back up at 5:30 in this building. I was tired. I took a big old Jesus nap after work. But I still was here. And I'm not condemning you. I'm just saying how many things in our lives are destroyed because everything else on the weekend becomes God, and God just becomes an afterthought. That's what I'm saying. And it destroys our relationship with God relationally, but how many families have been destroyed because we worship other things but our families? How much have we sacrificed to our idols that we missed the kids' game? And an anniversary. Or even church. I remember growing up and playing baseball and looking in the stands and not seeing my parents. And how hurtful that was. And it was because they were at work. My dad had multiple affairs with my mom, so he was with a girlfriend. I remember those days. And I wasn't a Christian, and my family weren't Christian, so we didn't think that way. But I remember looking at that going, man, I must not be very important. Can I tell you something, parents? If your kids, you're in the house still, make sure your kids know that they are very important. And that you're willing to take a few hours off of work to go be at their ball games. I mean, Sherry said it yesterday as a joke, but she was serious, but as a joke. She said, because Kendall's very busy with cheer and stuff, and so I feel like, so I got a sticker I haven't put on my car yet called Kendall's Uber. And so, like 3 days a week, I'm constantly going back to Northfield, or we're going to another school, or we're going here, we're going there, we're going. This coming week is homecoming week, so she's super busy and things like that. And me and Sherry, and she jokingly go, man, whew, Kendall just runs our weekend. And I jokingly looked at Sherry and said, she does, but when she becomes an adult, she'll go, my parents never messed a thing. My parents never messed. Kelvin, I remember one time Kelvin playing football, and it was pouring down raining, freezing, pouring down raining, and I remember sitting at the fence. I was sitting at the fence, and the light. It was Friday night lights, and it was raining, it was cold. But I remember sitting at the gate of the fence, just sitting there like this, and would not leave because my son was still out there, and I didn't leave until he left. That boy will always remember that his dad stood there in the pouring rain. Did I want to? Dear Lord, no. Like, I don't want to be wet. I want to go in and get dry. But I remember being the kid that didn't have his parents at their games. And I always thought, I'll never be that dad. I will always show up. I will always show up unless it's a Sunday, I don't show up. And neither will you. You see the balance? I know that's so tense saying it like, it's just what we did. So you don't have to do it. I'm not condemning you. All this idol chasing left behind destruction for the Israelites, and it leaves behind destruction for us too. So, two things. Idol worship always costs us something. And it always costs us, it always costs us something. And here's the second thing. The third thing, if you want to get rid of the idol in your life, we have to do what Moses did. If you're taking notes, write this down. Tear down the idol. We have to tear down the idol. Exodus 32:20 says, and he took the call the people had made and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it into powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. God never asked us to make room for idols, manage idols, or even to tolerate them. Moses tore it down and made it go away. And we have to do the same thing. We have to know, we have to call out that idol in our life, and we have to destroy it. Because if not, everyone, the idols will destroy us. They really will. How can our lives be so full, but we're still so empty on the inside? Because it's a counterfeit. Idols promise you everything, but they deliver nothing but destruction. They deliver destruction. So I've told you before, so I'm going to tell you what my idol was. When I was living in Kansas, and we're going to close with this story, but when I was in Kansas, I got really, really into food. I got really big. I was like, and for my height, it was big. And I remember seeing a picture of myself, and I didn't recognize myself anymore. I didn't recognize me, and so I met the chiropractor who became a really good friend of mine who attended the church that I was at, and he lost all this weight. And I was like, man, you got to tell me. His name was Danny. I said, Danny, you got to tell me what you did. And he's like, all right, this is what I did. And he said, I work out and all that. And I never worked out, and I never went to the gym, so I didn't know what I was doing. But I showed up one day by myself at a rec center, and I just started working out. And I started YouTubing. I started downloading apps, and I started doing all that. And here's what happened. First of all, I lost a lot of weight, but I also fell in love with the gym. And when I say I fell in love with the gym, I mean I worshiped it. I mean I was there 2 to 3 hours a day, sometimes twice. I remember getting up 5 o'clock in the morning, being in the gym by 5:30. I would come home, shower, eat, go to work sometimes, and I would call Sherry and say, hey, babe, I'm going to go back to the gym and work out some more. I became really addicted to it. To the point where it just become unhealthy. I was ordering supplements online, and I would spend hundreds of dollars a month on protein and pre-workout, and I would wear the clothing brand, and I was so in it. So in this, because I fell in love with the gym. But I started noticing my relationship with God started tearing off. Not that I was in sin, but remember when I said it cost us relationally, it cost us spiritually? Well, all these different things started happening to me. And so I started going, and then I just started feeling this emptiness on the inside. I was like, honey, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, why do I feel so empty? Why am I so empty on the inside? And of course, my wife, who's very, very honest with me, and if you know her, she'll be very honest with you too. And she looked at me and she said, because you have lost your worship. I was like, what? She said, you don't worship God like you used to. She said, Tony, I fell in love with you because of your love for God. And she said, you've lost that. And of course, me, being a man, I said, you're out of your mind. I still love the Lord. But like I started talking to God, and God started revealing to me, no, actually, your wife's right. You're God at the gym. I'm just an afterthought. I'm your job, so you just do that. But really, your love is in the gym. And so I had to make a decision. And I remember having a conversation with Sherry going down the street. She said, Tony, you just got to stop going. And I said, I don't want to stop going. I said, I need to go. I said, it makes me feel better. And she said, well, you need to make a sacrifice. So here's my sacrifice. So this is what I do today. And I've been doing it. And this is the way I tore down my idol, which was the gym. I used to get up at 4:30, get ready, be in the parking lot at 4:55, in the gym at 5. sometimes running up the stairs because I needed a piece of equipment and I know other people wanted that same equipment, and so we would race. They didn't know we were racing, but I knew we were racing. I was like, it's Tuesday, it's leg day, I gotta be there, and I know they're gonna be there, I'm gonna beat them. 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, you know? And that was me and Sherry, like we both did that. And so I made a commitment to God. I said, all right, God, I realize that I spend more time in the gym than I do with you. And I don't know how to fix that. Except to do this one thing. I get up now at 3:40 in the morning. I created a prayer room in my house. My son moved out, so we have an extra bedroom. I've created a prayer room. I go in that room. I have a Bible. I take my iPad. I have a candle. I light the candle because it's lavender and it helps with anxiety. I sit there and I read and I pray for an hour. Because here's my thought. If I can give the gym an hour and a half of my life, I could give God the first hour of the morning. I know some of y'all are like 3:40. Yeah. Because believe it or not, I know I work in a church, and I know. Y'all think all I do is pray and read all day. No. Sometimes I have to pick up your mess, and so I have to be a pastor, and I get phone calls. Some people die. I can't believe y'all do that. And, so pastors are busy. Thank you for not dying, though, and you're still alive. You're doing good. When I come here, I get distracted. I'm just distracted. Phones ringing, messages, emails, I'm just distracted. So I find it hard to come here. I know it's weird when I say it, I find it hard to come here and pray. So I have to be away from my job. And so now I get up. I still go to the gym 5 days a week, but I do not go more than 5 days. I used to go 7. I spend hardly any money on it now, on like pre-workout and stuff like that. I'm only there now. I get there at 5:15. Don't care if I'm going to beat anybody to anything. I'm only there now an hour and, hour and 15 minutes. And I leave, and I'm done. I'm just done. Because I want to have breakfast with my wife in the morning before she goes to work. So I'll go home. I'll get there early so we can... And my wife is awesome, and she has me breakfast made every morning when I walk in the door. I know. I'm blessed, right? Blessed. See, I'm racking up these brownie points. That's what I'm doing. Anyway, I'm going to close with this, okay? That's how I destroyed my idol. That's how I destroyed my idol. All of us in this room have idols. What's yours? As you've been sitting there, you probably thought about something. So here's how you know what your idol is. What do you put above God? For me, it was the gym. I spent 2 to 3 hours a day in the gym. That was my God. And I spent very, very little time with God in the Word and prayer. That was my God. I destroyed that God by putting God first at 3:40 in the morning. Do I expect all of you to give at 3:40? Absolutely not. I will tell you this, though, since I've changed, I am more energized and more happier because I get up at 3:40, spend time with my Jesus, and then do the rest of the day. I am in a lot better of a mood. I thought I would be a grumpy old man getting up at 3:40, but I'm doing pretty well. Am I falling asleep at like 8 o'clock? Yep, I am. So if we ever go out to dinner and I'm going, I got to go home, you know why, because I'm tired. So here's the deal, and here's where the rubber's going to meet the road right here. What do you put before God? It could be money. So how do you tear that idol down? You start giving. Start being generous. Start being generous. Is it social media? Some of y'all, it is. I know. You know why? Because when I go to restaurants, all I see families doing now is this. I'm like, do y'all even talk? Like, reintroduce yourself. Hi, my name's... Nice to meet you. Who's paying for dinner tonight? Right? If it's social media, take a 30-day fast. Go on a 30-day fast. Just fast from it. If it's food, go on a fast from the food that you really like. For me, it's anything that's sweet. Anything that's sweet. Anything that's sweet. If it's got sweet in the word, I mean, it's good. Even if it don't, it's still good. Go on a fast from food that brings you comfort. If it's ice cream, don't eat none. Like whatever you turn to satisfy you, turn away from it. Turn away from it. If it's a hobby, take a break from it. Take a break from it from a time. I promise you, you're not going to die if you don't do what your hobby you love to do. I guarantee it. If you do, you will be the first person in the world that has died from not doing what you love to do. I heard about a family, and I'm going to close right here. I heard about a family that realized they spent way too much time watching TV, so they didn't get rid of the cable, they got rid of the TV. They got rid of the TV. I know some of you are like, dear Lord, no. You started jerking. What? They got rid of the TV. And I know that sounds radical, but did you know that Jesus said in Matthew 18 that if anything causes you to sin, get rid of it? I mean, he said if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Now, not literally, don't do that, okay? Some of y'all start sweating. I gotta hurry up. All right. We gotta tear it down, but here's what we gotta do. We don't just tear it down, we replace it. Because anything that still becomes empty, we're gonna replace it with something else. And so we replace it with God. Psalm 84:2 says, my soul yearns, even faint for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Let me ask you a question. Is that a prayer that you can really pray right now? God, I just yearn for you. God, I just yearn for you, for the courts of the Lord. What's the courts of the Lord? The presence of God. I just yearn for you. Can you pray that? Can you honestly pray that? We could read that. Can you pray it, though, and mean it? If you can't, you have an idol in your life. God has to be number one, not number two. And he won't share you with anybody. If God number one in your life. Right now, this might say, my soul yearns for more of that, more of that, more of that, but not more of God. So tear down your idol. Tear it down. And then replace it with a relationship with God. Replace it with God. Replace it with God. Let's pray. Father, we just come before you. And I ask that, God, your presence and power would pierce our heart with truth. God, that you would show us, God, the idols in our lives, God. Any idol that we have, anything in our lives, God, that we put before you, God. I pray, God, that you would help us to see it, to identify it. And God, you would give us the strength and the power to tear it down. You would help us to tear it down. God, sometimes even if every good thing, God, we could turn into an idol. And so God, help us to see what the idols are in our lives and see what Moses did, and he tore it down. He tore it down. God, I pray that we would make you number one in our lives. We would tear down the things in our lives, God, that isn't of you. And God, that you would have your way and you would lead us, God, by your Spirit. With your head bowed, I just want to ask you a question. Are you ready to tear that idol down? Do you know of the idol? Like, do you see the idol? You see what you put before God. You see what you worship. And maybe you don't call it worship, but God will call it worship. What is it? What is that idol in your life? Then ask God this. If you don't know, or if you can't, just ask him, God, what do I put before you? What do I put before you? And then you ask God, God, help me to tear it down. And he'll tell you how. He'll tell you how. He told me how. And it's radical. But if we want a stronger relationship with God, we got to do things that are radical. Will I always get up at 3:40 in the morning? I don't know. But right now I do. Because that's my way of tearing down my idol. So God might just ask you to do something for 30 days, 20 days, 10 days. Just do it. Do whatever it takes to tear that idol down. If you're ready to tear those idols down, I want you to pray for the power of God to do that in you. God, I just pray right now for the power of God to tear down the idols in the lives of the people, God. Whether in this room or they're watching online, God, that they would tear down the idols, Lord. They would tear them down. They would tear them down. Some of you in this room, if you're honest, you would say, my idol's everything because I don't have a relationship with Jesus, so I go to different things looking for everything to fulfill me. But can I just tell you something in this room and online too? Nothing is ever going to fulfill you other than Jesus. You can look to anything in this world and nothing is going to satisfy you like Jesus can. If you're in here, you don't have a relationship with Jesus, man, today's your day. And he can forgive you. He can clear all your sin, all your shame, all your regrets, no matter what you've done. And you might be in here going, you have no idea what I've done. I don't, but Jesus does. And he took it and he put it on the cross. And the cross is proof that you're enough. And so if you're in here, you've never accepted Jesus as your Savior, I just want you to do one thing. I want you to take a bold step of faith. On the count of 3, raise that hand up. Let me pray for you. Let me lead you in that prayer. And we have a booklet for you to help you walk with Jesus. Let's do that. 1, 2, 3. If you want to say yes to Jesus, I want to see that hand high and lifted up and raised up. And we're going to pray a prayer with you and for you. All right, Jesus, we just pray, God, right now that your hand would be upon those people, God. That, God, that you would lead them and guide them, God, by your Holy Spirit, God. That, Lord, that you would do something incredible in their lives this week, God. As they go about their week, God, show them the things that they put in front of you. And that, God, that they will tear it down. They will literally tear it down, God. Because, God, you will not share your glory with anybody. And so, Lord, I pray, God, that your face would shine upon them, your blessing would be upon them, and that you would lead them, God, by your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to go back into worship here in a moment. We're going to sing about the very thing about having no other God before us. But before we do that, as you leave, you're going to receive this card, or not receive it, pick it up, and invite somebody next week to friends and family. It's going to be an incredible Sunday, an incredible moment. If you have kids, if you know people with kids, bring them on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of fun in our carnival and things like that. And so if you haven't filled this card out, please do that before you leave. Leave it in your seat, and you get to tell me what to preach about for the next few weeks. That's amazing right there. So anyway, love you guys. Have an incredible week, and we'll see you again next week.